All right, well, tell me, give me your overall thoughts of the game, your impression after watching the whole thing start to finish.
Well, it's really weird because every time I think of this game, look at this game, watch the game, afterthought of the game, I can't help but think Lamar Jackson. I know he's still the biggest story, even though he did not play, because I'm just thinking how well Baltimore could have done if obviously if he was playing. But when you look at the game that was played without Lamar, you look at it and go, okay, the Bengals cannot, especially offensively, they cannot play 3 quarters of football. That's number one. Number two, their running game is anemic. But they still, this team find ways to win football games. And to me, that is in itself is something special. I mean, I think it was a miracle they won this particular game, but it's just something is just not there. And maybe I have to lower the bar because my expectations, I really thought they were going to blow Baltimore out. I truly thought they would win that game decisively, but Baltimore, you just got to give Baltimore credit what they do, what Harbaugh does with such, I'm going to say, little talent or restrictions or limitations on offense. They were in a game, and when you think about it, even as a Bengal fan, I say Baltimore gifted the Bengals the game last night.
Before we get on to talking about the Bengals and some of the issues that rose up in the game last night, which you just pointed out, I made the comment, Tim, in the monologue today when they went down on NBC to Melissa Stark last night, and they said right before the game that Lamar Jackson did not even make the trip to Cincinnati. I got to tell you, Tim, I've been lucky. I obviously never played. You played. You've been in there, and maybe your reaction to this is different. But just based on my 30-plus years being around football players and baseball players, and nothing's more important than what your teammates think about you. And I have to ask you, for me, him not getting on the plane and to at least be a presence on the sideline for Baltimore last night, for me, if I'm one of his teammates, I have a hard time looking at him as being a leader of my franchise moving forward. Am I off base on that?
No, I think you're 100% right. But there'll be fragments in the locker room. There's no question. Some people will totally understand that he's going after his money bag and he has to do what he has to do, and they will be on board with it. And then there will be that, middle ground where, okay, I understand it, but damn, you still could have got on that plane. And then there'll be people that will just absolutely despise him for what he's doing to the team. And because the team is built around him, the offense is customized around him. If he would have just, like I said early in the week, if this guy would have walked out on the practice field and showed his teammates, I'm at least trying, that is a message within itself that your leader is doing his best to get on the football field with you Sunday night. But consequently, by not even trying and not traveling, he's also sending a direct message that I really don't care about you guys. I care about myself. I care about my money. And I am going to show this management, particularly the owner and the general manager, I'm going to show them how well and important I am. And if I don't play, you don't win. Okay, fine. They understand that. That's a message, in my very strong opinion, that he does not have to send because they know that. It is just a numbers game. And I think the major part of it, when you break it down, Thom, is the fact that he doesn't have an agent. He doesn't have that conduit between him and the club from the emotional standpoint. And I think that's probably what's really affecting him. He's probably taking some things so personal because he doesn't understand what negotiations are all about.
All right, let's shift gears now to the Bengals. Walk me through, Tim, when you look. Let's start with the offensive line. Okay, we know what happened coming in. What was your impression? Let's just start with the right side. We'll get to Jackson Carman and Jonah Williams here in a minute. But the two starters on the right side, Adeniji and Sharping, how did you feel that they played?
They played okay. And when I say okay, first thing you have to do, Thom, you have to understand why a starter is a starter and a backup is a backup. If there's huge disparity, or the backup would be starting at least somewhere in the National Football League, unless he was a rookie getting some time and things of that nature. So, yes, there's going to be a drop off. Now, the question is, will they be so exposed that it would hurt the offense? I don't think that happened. Now, did they play great? No. Did they play good? I'm going to give them on the scale of 1 to 10, they probably played a 5. Okay, and that's fine as long as they wasn't as long as they wasn't a thorn in Joe Burrow's side, meaning that Baltimore just absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage. Now, with that being said, when we talk about the offensive line, Thom, you got to give credit to the coaches. They adjusted to quick throws where Joe would not be as exposed as he would have been. So, but that limits who they really are. So that limits that long pass down the field where you really need that time. But I thought they did an adequate job, but I think they'll be in trouble, real trouble next week.
Look, Jonah Williams, he's had his issues this year. I think he gave up the most sacks of any left tackle in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, 12 of them. But, Jackson Carman's a young man, grew up right up the road over here in Fairfield. And, he was given a chance very early on, high draft pick. Things did not pan out, loses his job to a rookie this year. Now he's coming in to play tackle. There are already long days and nights for the coaching staff, as it is no matter what, regular season, postseason. How different is this offense going to look heading into Buffalo if they don't have Jonah Williams?
First, let's talk about having Jonah Williams. He's already struggling. I mean, when I say struggling, he didn't have the best year. Like you said, he gave up 12 or so sacks. So when you add that to the piece of now he may be injured, so he will not be 100%. I think we can all pretty much know that going into the game. So when you're talking about a guy that's already given up 12 sacks, playing average or below average, now he's got to go in there and play hurt. Well, that's when a coach has to make a decision. Would we rather have a 70, 60% Jonah Williams or the backup? If they play Jonah Williams, that really says something about Carman Jackson, that, wow, they are really down on this young man who's 100%, but they're going to play a guy who's only 60 to 70%. That concerns me. That's when I look at it. And from a offensive standpoint, oh my gosh, what do you do? A byproduct of that would be of a struggling offensive line. I'll give you an example. There was a time where Chase, in I think the third quarter, ran a slant route. And when he ran the slant route, the safety jumped on it and they met at the ball at the same time, and the safety made a play on it. Okay, what does that mean? Why is that an impact? Well, there is no way in HE double hockey sticks that safety would have done that with a healthy offensive line, because Jamar would have ran right by him. So they know the pressure's coming. The defense know they're going to get pressure on Joe Burrow, and they're going to make the quick throws go. And that's not the Bengals offense. And I am really, really, really concerned about that.
Is it absurd, Tim? There was talk about this a couple of weeks ago. Is it absurd to even entertain the thought of asking Andrew Whitworth to come back?
Yeah, it's absurd because he's under contract. You would have to trade for him, number one. There's two elements of that. What people don't understand, his rights are still held by LA, the Rams. That's number one. So, I mean, obviously, if I'm the Rams, I'm sitting there going, you want him? Come to Papa. I got the leverage over here. Number two, he was a great player, but he's retired. And he is not Michael Jordan. He's not coming back out of retirement in his prime. So with that being said, be careful what you ask for. He may be there in uniform just like me, but with the peg leg I have, the bad knee, the bad shoulder, the bad this, the bad that, you don't have enough time for me to talk about all my bad ailments. It would be very difficult for him to compete at that level. So it is absolutely absurd to be, but I understand that's more of an emotional plea than a practical plea. Let's have a guy of quality to come in and play lineman. And not going to happen. And if it does, well, number one, it's not going to happen. I'm not even going to go there.
Okay. Buffalo on Sunday dominated the game statistically, much like, the Ravens statistically dominated the game last night. I mean, the Bengals averaged in the game 4 yards per play in the game. Baltimore outrushed him, outpassed him, on and on and on and on. Buffalo, Josh Allen was sacked 7 times in that game by Miami. Now, Miami's got a good pass rush. I thought the Bengals pass rush last night for some young guys who we haven't talked a lot about did very, very well, especially late in the game. But Allen has turned it over a league-high 22 times this year. He throws 2 more picks. He fumbles for a touchdown in the game yesterday. They got to be a little concerned in Buffalo about him and their offense too, right?
I would say no. That's who they are. That's their identity. They play high risk, high reward football. You think about it. Josh Allen runs the ball like a running back. He is not a protected quarterback. When they are putting game plans together, it is not stay in the pocket, do the right thing, go down, slide. No, he is running over people. So it's hard for us to change our mental approach when it comes to a quarterback like him. He is a big, clunky Lamar Jackson, but he has the mentality of a gunslinger. So he's kind of a Brett Favre and a Lamar Jackson, a hybrid of both of those guys. So I don't think, is Buffalo running on all cylinders? Absolutely not. However, their style of play, I think they pretty much, I won't say are comfortable with it, but understand that there are going to be some turnovers. It is, protecting the football, obviously, is everyone's identity. But here's what Buffalo has. Buffalo has the ability that if they get behind, they can play from behind. If they get up, they can increase their lead. So Buffalo can play and beat you different ways. And I think they're more so struggle on the defensive side of football than the offensive side of football. But they got formidable weapons on that offense that just, when you play against the Bengals, it's going to be scary. And they're healthy.
One final question I want to ask you about, and I think today, and if you take off your Bengals glasses for a minute, not you, but I'm saying in general, the people watching the show, I think one of the most fascinating stories in sports, we're going to find out the answer to it later today. I don't know how closely you're following this, but there was a time you were a player agent. And NIL has come into the mix now in the collegiate game, and we know about all of that. It was a foregone conclusion that Ohio State star quarterback C.J. Stroud was going to go to the NFL draft, and he might. He has to make a decision by the end of day today. He's been a Heisman finalist 2 years in a row. He is considered to be the number 1 quarterback pick, and many people feel like he's a top 3 or 4 pick, which would be basically guaranteed about $25-30 million. He's a deeply religious kid. He cares very much about his legacy and about other things in the big picture. Okay, now I'm not saying what he ought to do one way or the other, but he's not declared for the draft yet. And there's a chance he's coming back to Ohio State. And they're saying, a lot of people are saying that this could change the landscape on NIL differently than anything we have ever seen up to this point in time. Do you have any thoughts? Maybe it's unfair of me to even ask you about this because I didn't tell you ahead of time.
Let me tell you, I love it. I absolutely love it. This young man has something called a choice. He has the opportunity to stay in school and still make his money, or he can go to the NFL and make his money. I couldn't tell you as a former player, you have very little options of what you can or cannot control. It's usually you're in a system that says you have to do ABC 1, 2, 3, and you do ABC 1, 2, 3. This young man, as well as the collegiate athlete today, they have choices. And the systems around them, whether it be the college or professional football, has to adjust to that. So I think it's a great opportunity for this guy to really sit down with his family and see what's in his best interest. Now, the downside of taking the NIL deal, that makes you one more year removed from that rookie contract expiring and getting the $200 million or $300 million. That's if you're successful, assuming you're successful in the NFL, to get that type of money. So use Joe Burrow as an example. Imagine if Joe Burrow would have stayed in school one more year, and gotten whatever $10 million from his NIL deal. Well, guess what? That $10 million in that extra year would probably cost him another 30, 40, maybe even 50 million with the numbers heading in the direction that they're heading. So options are great, but if you want to play with the big boys and you want to play with the best of the best, let me tell you, playing against a 17-year-old is totally different than playing against a 27-year-old stud. So I would have taken the route of I want to play against the best because I want to be the best. So I wouldn't be playing against 17 or 18-year-olds.
I got you. All right. Tim, you're the best, man. Thanks for joining on such short notice. And it's a big-time game. Big-time game. This is a game we were waiting for it. On that Monday night, the Bengals came out rolling in that game against Buffalo. They get the touchdown. Buffalo gets a field goal. The Bengals are marching back down the field before the cardiac arrest of Damar Hamlin, and thank God above, he's doing very, very well right now. But this is a game, the game that this will be the most watched game maybe of all of them come this weekend.
Yeah, and here's the beauty of it. Once this game is over, if Kansas City win, that will be the most watched game after this one. So, and you know what? If you think about this, Thom, I'm a football guy, and you cover a lot of different sports, and you're awesome at it. I mean, absolutely awesome.
Oh, thank you.
When have you known back-to-back years that the NFL has had these type of games, matchups, and games? I'm talking about the matchup matching the PR that goes into it. It's been phenomenal. So far, it's been phenomenal. All the games have been great games. Man, I'm as a football fan now, I'm just so excited. And, you know, I hope my beloved Bengals make it, but if I, as you said, took off the Bengals glasses, I think it's going to be an uphill climb for them.
You know, it's funny you say that because you stop and think about it. I was talking about this with my son last night. To win the Super Bowl, the Bengals are basically going to have to win 3 Super Bowls now moving forward because everybody agrees Buffalo's a Super Bowl team. Kansas City, potentially, Super Bowl team. And then whoever comes out of the NFC, 49ers, whoever, I mean, this is a stretch in the next potentially 4 weeks where the Bengals will have to win 3 Super Bowl games against 3 Super Bowl teams.
On the road. Buffalo, potentially Kansas City, and then Arizona. Wow, you talking about the odds being stacked. But that formula in itself, by it being so tough, by us sitting here and when we analyze it and we break it down, we're like, man, they're hurt. These are the things that you look back and go, can you believe they won the Super Bowl under these conditions? No, basically 2 offensive linemen, everyone else backups on the road, Buffalo, Kansas City, Arizona, NFC champions, which will probably, in my opinion, be San Francisco. But if they were to do that, it would just make it that much more special.
You know, I keep telling you I want to tell you goodbye, but there are a couple of things that came up over the weekend, and it made me think. You know, in a day and age, Tim, where it doesn't matter what the sport is, but we're going to talk about football. In the day and age where we hear so much about rebuilding and needing time to get things together and a new system and a new coach, when you look at what Brian Daboll has done with the Giants, and when you look at what Peterson has done with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 1 year, first year right out of the gate. Right now, granted, you know, Daniel Jones, talented guy. He proved something to me yesterday that I didn't think he had in him. Shame on me. Trevor Lawrence coming out of college, phenomenal player, up and down rookie year. But I think, you know, these guys might be ruining it for a lot of guys who are taking over as a head coach that they're asking for 2, 3, 4 years to get the thing in the right direction.
Yeah, these guys are showing what's a rebuild. If the nucleus of your talent is there, my system, I mean, you look at Zach Taylor, and more so you look at Lou Anarumo. You know, Lou, I personally thought was going to get fired, and I thought he deserved to get fired based on the statistics and how the defense was performing. But that shows you, you put my system and you give me my guys that I can put in my system, and you build a bond or a relationship like Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor. And you can tell when you look at the Giants, these guys are out there playing for the coach. It's very easy. It's fun. And, you know, it's no longer where when you walk into the lunchroom, the coaches go left and you go right. It's now we're more of, and when I use the term family, we're on the same page. We can talk to one another. We don't take things personal. And if I need to challenge you, I can challenge you. And yes, they're making. Now you got to go back. These teams have talent. Now I think there's a huge difference between a team like the New York Giants or the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans has very little talent. So whoever gets that job will need to, build through the draft or free agency and get a nucleus and go from there. But you got to commend the guys like Zach Taylor. You got to commend, the guys in New York and Jacksonville and some other teams as well that's been able to turn it around in a split second, so it seems. So, yeah, I think it's going to be tough for coaches to go into that interview process, and I need 5 years. 3 years is going to take me to get there, and then we'll start winning after the third year. It's going to be hard to sell the owners on that.
Tim, thanks as always for your time, young man. Have a great rest of your day.